fellow bag makers. I'm so sorry that the Harlequin Pouch video that I did promise would be last Saturday at the latest Monday is now coming out today. This week has just really gone Pete Tong. Obviously had workmen outside the studio all last week, which just meant that filming just couldn't happen. I think they have finally found Australia, so they've finally stopped. But unfortunately, as you can probably tell from my voice, I've just not really been able to film. I've kept losing my voice all week. I'm still struggling with it, but I've just had to sort of knuckle down and power through. I'm not sick, I'm not poorly. It's a weird and wonderful side effect of some tablets. I'm sure I have mentioned in a previous video that I suffer from chronic migraine, and I've started on some new tablets probably about a month ago, just over, of some new tablets which are actually an epileptic tablet, and it's given me some really funky side effects which have kicked in over the past couple of weeks. They're amazing. They've really helped with the migraine, which is great, but obviously I'm just trying to have to power through the side effects. So it's affecting my chest and my throat, so my voice does keep going on and off through the video, so I do apologise. I do have to cough on that a few times, so just bear with me. Hopefully it's going to ease. It will get better. It's a lot better than it was a week ago. I couldn't hardly speak at all a week ago, so fingers crossed it'll be fine. But anyway, I've got the Harlequin Pouch done, and this is what we're going to make today. So it's crafted by Leanne. It's a free pattern in our Facebook group. Go and join our Facebook group, get the pattern. It's amazing. She's got other patterns in there as well, and then she's got paid for patterns on her Etsy. They're all amazing. It's a great little scrap buster. Mine is made with vinyl as the accent and vinyl on the back. This is cotton interfaced with the heavy cotton woven interfacing that I sell on my website, and it's lined with like a waterproof PUL. It's not waterproof canvas as such. It's not the same waterproof canvas that I would use in my more structured bags. It is more like a shower curtain-y waterproof material, but it's ideal for things like this. I can't actually remember where I got it from. If I can remember, or if I can find it, I will link it. But it's, like I say, it's a great scrap buster. Sometimes if I'm cutting out other projects and I've got kind of like a sort of decent chunk left, but nothing really big enough for anything, I'll just maybe cut out sort of little accent pieces, and I'll just keep them to one side, and then as I sort of collect them, I know I've got enough to whip a pouch up for somebody, because they make great little gifts at Christmas. I made loads up, and I just kind of did them in these two panels, like, I don't know if you can sort of see, but it's got the seam down the middle, and I sort of embroidered people's initials on and gave them as Christmas gifts, and they went down really well. I do the open-ended zip, and I talk you through where to put the connectors if you want to make it into a crossbody bag, because this is kind of the size if you want to make it into a crossbody bag. So the connectors this side or on the top where the zip is. So if that's where you want to put it, I talk you through that as well. So I think that's everything, so let's get started. I just want to go over the pattern pieces that we'll need for the Harlequin Pouch. So you're going to need your two top accent pieces, and then your two bottom accent pieces. Now you can see these are cut on the mirror of each other, so you need to cut one, and then you need to flip your pattern piece over and cut the other one out. So these are going to be our front panel. This is what's going to make up our front panel. Now what you can do is you can cut out another set of these exactly the same and make up your back panel exactly the same to match your front panel. Or what you can do, because I'm going to make my back panel slightly differently, and I've got two of my back panel pieces again cut on the mirror. And again, if you don't want to make these pieces, you can cut 4 of these pieces and make the Harlequin pouch with just the centre seam instead of having these diagonal seams. So it's so versatile, you can do it either way. So those are the pieces that we're going to put together to make our front and our back panels. We've then got 2 fleece pieces, and we have 2 lining pieces, and I have 1 zipper tab. The pattern says 2, so you can do 2, but I do my zipper slightly differently, but I'll show you how I do that. So those are all of the pieces that we're going to need to make the Harlequin pouch. So it's a great little scrap buster. Like I say, you can do any combination, how you want it to work. If you're wanting to make this version into a crossbody bag or a little wristlet, I'll explain to you where you need to put your connectors and where you can pop them. I'll explain to you where you can do them as we're going along in the pattern. So let's get started. So when you're matching your pieces together, you want to obviously make sure that you're putting the pieces together that make the same size piece as one of these. So match your diagonal line, and what I do is I match this line up here first and then match all the way along, and you should be left with sort of a little triangle here. And your seam allowance for the extra large pouch, which is the pouch that I'm doing today, is 1/2 inch. In the pattern, Leanne does give you the seam allowances for all the different sizes. So the regular size, the pencil case size, the extra large size, and all have the seam allowances and the size zips and everything that you need written in. So this is a 1/2 inch, and basically this bit here is 1/2 inch. So it basically means that it should line up really nicely. So I'm going to use 2.5 inch stitch length, which when I construct I always use 2.5 inch stitch length, and when I top stitch I use 4.5 stitch length. So back stitch at the front and at the back, and then I'm just going to open this seam up, butterfly it out, and I'm going to top stitch on each side of this seam. And I tend to top stitch at about 1/8 of an inch. And then we're going to join our two pieces together. So we've basically formed two pieces that match the same as our back pieces. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that these diagonals match perfectly. So rather than clipping from top to bottom, I clip to make sure that this seam here matches, and I just run a couple of basting stitches over that just to make sure that that sits while I'm stitching. Don't worry too much if your panels don't line up exactly. It'll come right, you know, as you construct. So we're going to join this panel together again at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're just going to butterfly this seam open the same way we did with the other seams and run top stitching down each side. If you're doing the bag all in cotton, what you can do at this point is you can press the seams open. And I'm just going to remove those couple of little basting stitches that I put in to keep that seam in place while I stitch that seam down, just so that I can top stitch it. And I'm just using my fingers to keep the seam open while I run those top stitching down. And then I don't know if you can see, if my camera's focusing, but where I basted those two panels together, my little V, the seams match really well, and it's just because it hasn't shifted as I'm sewing it. So I'm going to move on to my back panel, and I'm just going to do that centre seam 1/2 inch and then top stitch down either side. So that's the front and the back panel done. It's at this point I need to go and add the fusible fleece. So the fusible fleece is cut slightly smaller so it doesn't go into the seam allowances, so it is ideal for domestics. So I'm just going to go and attach that now, and I'll be back in a moment. So that's the fusible fleece attached to both sides of the front panel and the back panel. So this is a good point if you want to attach a nameplate or a handmade plate. So I'm just going to pop mine in now. So always just use a little tiny bit of glue behind the plate just to make sure it's nice and secure. And then we are going to attach our zip. So the measurements are given that you need for the zip, but I just sort of cut a piece of zip off and then I insert my zip sort of slightly differently. So because I'm using 1/2 inch seam allowance, I know that I want my zip to stop 3/4 of an inch away from either end, and that's so that I've got my 1/2 inch seam allowance and I've got 1/4 inch so that when the pouch turns through it sits nicely and it's not too tight, but that it's also there's not too much of like a gaping hole so that it looks too open. So I mark 3/4 inch on either side. And then with my zipper pouch, because I'm just using one zipper tab, and because I'm using vinyl, I don't need it to have no raw edges, so it's just cut to 1 inch wide. If you were using cotton, you would cut it to 2 inches wide, you would fold it in on itself, and then you would fold it in on itself again, so that when you fold it over the edge of the zip, there is no raw edge against this edge here. So I'm just going to use a little bit of double-sided tape down the middle just to secure it while I'm sewing. I've just marked a line down the centre so that I know where to place the edge of my zip. I'm just going to make sure that that edge is just melted a little bit, just so that it doesn't fray. And then I'm just going to top stitch down just to secure that zipper tab in place. So in order for me to get exactly the right length zip that I want, I'm just going to marry that end of the zip up against one end, and then I'm just going to mark that zip there where that other line is, and then normally that's where I would put my other zip tab if I was doing 2 zip tabs. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to have an open zip, so I'm just going to fold where that line is and I'm going to fold it over on itself. I'm going to cut the end of that zip off. Use a few stitches just to keep that tacked down. I'm just going to do exactly the same on the other side. So I'm just going to pinch where that line is. I'm going to bring that fold up to meet the teeth, so it's like a 90-degree angle. trim the excess tape off. I just use the lighter just to melt the ends of the tape, just to sort of hold it enough while I'm popping those few stitches in. And that's my zip done, ready to insert. So it's at this stage that I'd be thinking about where I want my connectors in, if I was adding straps or wristlets. So if I was going to add a wristlet, I'd be adding the connectors onto either side. So I'd be just doing a little connector with a D-ring and adding it on to the side. If I was doing a crossbody strap, you can add your connectors on either side here, and I'd be putting them on at this point onto the front so that I can't forget to do them. The amount of times I've been making this pouch into a crossbody and I've actually forgot to put the connectors in, and I've just been, you know, in a world of my own, soldering on, and then I've got to the end and I've soldered up and I've totally forgot to add them, so I always do it at this point. Obviously I'm just making it as a pouch today. But what you can do is you can actually add your connectors into the top part here. So I would add them in on between this part in the zip, so that when you fold it over and you turn it through, the connector sits on the outside of the zip, and then that way it's not on the outside, it's between the front panel or the back panel and the zip. And the measurement I would always use is 1.25 inches. It's literally, it would sit just on the outside of this zipper tab if you're putting it at 1.25 inches, and that's a measurement that I've always found that works well. If you don't want to put your connectors on the outside seam, that's where I'd put them. So I would base them to the front panel and the back panel, and I would do it at this point, and you would put them on the left side of both of your panels, because when you then place them together, they're on the correct sides. So 1.25 inches from the left hand side is where you'd want to be putting your connectors if you were wanting to add a crossbody strap at this stage. So I'm going to put my zip in. So I'm going to baste my zip in first. And just use a long basting stitch to do that. So I'm just going to line the start of my zip up with that first mark that I made, and it lines up exactly with the end on the other side. And then we just want to put one of our lining pieces. Now, the lining that I'm using is actually very, very lightweight, waterproof canvas. It's probably more like PUL, like what you kind of have like a shower curtain made in. So I'm just going to attach that at it's around about 3/8 of an inch, because I'm using a number 5 zipper. If you were using a number 3 zipper, it would be 1/4 of an inch. And then to top stitch, actually want to top stitch just the front panel and the seam down over. You want the lining pushed away. You don't want to be top stitching the lining down. And then you just want to be repeating exactly the same on the other side. So that's our front and back panel attached and our lining attached, and we just need to sew it all together now. So I always start by matching my seams at the bottom, and then I match my seams at the sides, because those are the most important ones that you really want to match. And I always start by sewing these seams first, because those are the seams that I want to make sure that they match, because that's what's going to make your pouch look really good. Just adjust my stitch length. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over and I'm going to start at this seam, because I don't want it to move. and then we can sew our lining. Obviously remembering to leave an opening at the bottom, because we need it. That's where we're going to turn our lining through. And with Leanne's patterns, the lining is drafted to fit inside the pouch, so you don't need to take an extra seam allowance, so you still sew at the 1/2 inch. And then I'm just going to sew a couple of inches on either side. So it means I've left an opening to turn through. I'm going to trim down this seam a little bit just before I box my corners, but I'm going to leave where I'm boxing. And what you want to do is you want to really trim down to about half this seam, where obviously you've got quite a bit of thickness, but obviously not taking it too close, because obviously you don't want to be taking too much off that. You're going to risk sort of reducing the strength of that seam, because you don't want it coming apart. So we're just going to box these corners now. So just pull them flat, get those seams to meet up. And we're going to sew those at 1/2 inch. And you can sew 2 rows of stitching along these box corners if you want to add a little bit extra strength. And then I'm just going to cut these seams down to about half. And then I'm just going to do exactly the same with the lining, matching the seams. this point we're just going to check that everything's sewn up nicely, all those seams are matching, we haven't missed anything. And then we're just going to close our opening. Now you can hand sew this if you want to, or you can sew it on the machine. And then because this lining has been designed to fit snugly, like it's actually sort of cut slightly smaller, it does fit really nicely. And there we go, there's the Harlequin pouch all finished. Waterproof lining inside. Because I do the open zip there, it just makes it a little bit easier if you've got bigger bottles. That's the only reason that I do my zip a little bit differently. The zip end sits nice and flat, but that's how I make the Harlequin pouch. I hope that's been helpful. Apologies for my voice coming in and out. Apologies for the ink on my hand off where I was stamping my my boxes for posting. But yeah, hope that's been helpful. Any questions, feel free to drop me a comment in the comments box down below. And thanks for your patience in waiting for this video. Speak soon and have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to see my next video when it's released. I'll see you next time.